I'm Jeff Murphy from Boston University Alumni Relations, and I'm your host for an interview series showcasing the career paths of our most interesting and accomplished alumni. Welcome to the Proud to Be You podcast. Today's guest is Fred Santarpia, the former Chief Digital Officer at Condé Nast. Fred earned a degree in Banking and Financial Services Management from BU's Metropolitan College in 2008. I spoke to Fred at a really interesting time in his career as he had just announced his decision to step away from his senior role at Condé Nast and move on to a new challenge. In addition to exploring this decision, Fred and I talked about the many other difficult choices he's made while navigating a career in finance, accounting, media, and more. Well, Fred, thanks so much for carving out some time for us, and let's get right to the elephant in the room. You recently announced that you're actually stepping down from Condé Nast, and I'm certainly hoping that we can explore that a little bit, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure, that's totally fine. It was a tough decision for me. I love the company. Condé Nast is a fantastic. Legendary media company, and I've had a great almost 7-year run with the company. But it was a good time in my career and my personal life to take some time off and think about finding the next mission.
Great. And that's entirely what this whole podcast is about. You know, our listeners are interested in hearing how people make decisions and move their careers forward and take families into account and things like that. So I'm glad that we can dive in. But let's start at the beginning. Did you grow up dreaming about being a chief digital officer?
I don't know if anybody grows up dreaming of being a chief digital officer. No, yeah. I didn't. If anything, I was more of an artist and a writer in my youth, and had an interesting career path, to say the least.
No, and it's interesting to hear you talk about being an artist, because I know from reviewing sort of your history about some of the roles you've played in art, and I'm excited to talk about that. So also in doing some Google stalking of you, I know you grew up in Staten Island. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes, very proud Staten Island native.
And so I also know that you went to Villanova as an undergrad. What about your background led you to Villanova and what you ended up studying there?
Well, frankly, when I was in high school, my dad, I applied to almost, I think, 14 colleges in my application process. I think my dad was a little worried that I wasn't going to get in any place. And Villanova was kind of a top of our list, and I happened to take a trip to campus, had a wonderful side experience, and it just felt right for me. And it wasn't too far from home, which is something that at the time was something that was important to me and to my family, and we made the call, and I ended up studying accounting at Villanova, which frankly, you look back on your youth and you wonder what was I thinking? And I don't think I was thinking anything, really, Jeff. I think I was having too much fun at the time, partying and enjoying my friends. And my dad at the time was, look, be an accountant because you'll always have a job. It's a skill that's always in demand, and there's always a market for it. And while I was in school, that sounded logical enough for an 18, 19-year-old. And when I graduated college and I took my first job, which was at Arthur Andersen, one of the old, quote unquote, big six public accounting firms at the time, which is no longer with us, I realized that I was an accountant, and that was a really bad day for me. And I spent, long story short, to kind of, give the ending, I spent the next 7 to 10 years of my career trying to figure out how to navigate out of accounting and finance and into industries in which I could pursue a more creative career.
So that's a really interesting point. Did you go into Villanova knowing you wanted to study accounting, or just sort of landed on it once you ended up in Pennsylvania?
No, I had no idea. I had no idea what I wanted to do with myself. Yeah. I was away from home for the first time, and more than anything, I think I was enjoying the freedom of the social elements of college, meeting new people, living away from home. And, when you're a freshman going into a sophomore, you're typically in a business school. You've got a lot of general business courses before you need to choose your major. And when I did, the inclination, and I took a lot of advice from my parents, and the inclination was that accounting was always going to pay the bills, and that would be a safe choice. So that's kind of how I navigated there. It wasn't like I had a strong desire to be in accounting or business, but that was the safe thing to do at the time.
Sure. Which makes a ton of sense. And obviously, so many of us lean on families and friends and other mentors to help guide us. And sometimes you end up, down that path that you maybe realize isn't for you. So when you start that first job at Arthur Andersen, do you already kind of know that it's not the right fit? Or does it, take a little bit of that full-time professional experience before you really kind of decided that you needed to get on a different direction?
No, it was scary. It was very scary because you come out of college, you're not quite sure, um, you know, you're in your first job, and you're not quite sure what the right decisions are. But I was in a very, very formal corporate environment, doing work that I felt was very dry. That for me it was devoid of passion for me, and um, really didn't require not just creativity in the way that we think of it in terms of art or entertainment, but creativity in my thinking. And culturally, it just didn't feel like the right fit for me personally. But I was also practical, and I realized that pivoting out of accounting may not be the best decision for my long-term career at the time. So for a very long period of time, I was very conflicted and spent, quite a lot of time advancing my career in accounting and finance, and also trying to, navigate, ways that I could potentially move into more exciting industries, right? So, I immediately decided, okay, well, you majored in accounting for 4 years. You're at a big six public accounting firm that some people who want to be in this field would kill to have an opportunity to be at. It would be a waste if you didn't go and take the CPA exam and get your CPA license as part of this experience. So even though I really had no interest in pursuing accounting as a career, I did the hard work over the next 2 years to go out and study, take the tests, get licensed, and do the things that one would otherwise do if they were going to pursue that career, wholeheartedly.
So wait, you did end up doing the CPA? I want to make sure I
Oh yeah,
followed
no,
you
look,
there.
I
Oh,
took
geez.
I
Wow.
took the CPA exam. I'm a certified public accountant in the state of New York, although I wouldn't hire me to do your taxes. And and as I went on to get my master's in finance from BU.
So is it, I know that you had a chance to and spend a great deal of your career working at Universal Music Group. And I know that you said sort of growing up, you thought of yourself, you had an interest in art, I'm guessing music. Is that Universal job get you more on the path? I know, and that's eventually what led you to, at the same time you're getting your degree at BU, right?
Right. That was kind of like one of my big pivot moments. So, I had left Arthur Andersen very early on, realizing it wasn't a fit for me. I had bounced around to a small startup, in the early 2000s, kind of like during that first dot-com boom, if you will. And I had two job offers in front of me. I had a job offer from Goldman Sachs to join their prime brokerage organization. And I had a job offer from Universal Music Group to run finance and accounting for one of their technology divisions, and kind of running the books for their data centers and their IT organizations. And the Goldman Sachs, Goldman people would have killed for that Goldman Sachs job. It was top notch job, top notch firm. And when I was there, I think it was probably my fourth or fifth round of interviews, and I was looking at the environment. It was very similar to what I had previously at Arthur Andersen, and I knew it just didn't feel right for me. And when I went to Universal, you walk in And even though it was a finance and accounting job, make no mistake about it, there was an energy there, right? The music was on in, the hallways, and, every employee had a stereo on their desk, and the nameplates were CDs, and there was music all over the place, and it had a different energy to it. So, even though the offer on paper didn't look as great, and I was still doing finance and accounting, I thought, here was an opportunity to kind of get myself closer to something that I think I might have more luck and more success at. So I ended up taking the job at Universal, which was a really interesting moment in time for the industry, because this was like 2002, which was the peak year of CD sales in the music industry. So height of the value of that industry before the advent of Napster and piracy and the unbundling of the album and all of those things that went along with kind of a period of great change and great consolidation in that industry. And as I said, I was still in a finance capacity, but I was in a finance capacity in kind of the digital and tech arm of the organization, which meant I was much closer to where the change was happening in that area of the business.
And it obviously sounds like there's a great just cultural fit for you. Even though you're working on, again, accounting and finance, you're really feeling like you've maybe found your tribe. You found a company that aligns more with what your interests are.
Well, I felt like it was more, I guess it was more palpable for me, right? It wasn't just, with the accounting and finance jobs I was in, I was auditing P&Ls of other people's companies, right? And here we were kind of supporting the art of, the world's greatest recording artists, right? Universal was the largest recorded music company in the world. And, it was fun as a young kid coming up to be part of that. And this was kind of where this was during again during a period of great change. So as a young person coming up in that industry, it opened up a lot of opportunities to start to participate in other parts of the business. And if you understood, the benefit of coming from an accounting and finance background, and also part of why I continued on to get my master's from BU at the time. Having a mastery of how the P&L works and how investment decisions are made can really serve you well as you move into more of general operation of a business. So, and at the time, I was looking to take on more, but I really needed to have the business savvy in order to be able to understand how some of those decisions were being made at the senior level of the company. And that was a big decision on why I had decided at the time to go back and pursue my master's.
And that makes tons of sense. And one of the reasons I was excited to chat with you today, there's several reasons, but one of them was because you got your master's degree as a BU online student and did it while working full time. What was that online student experience like for you? And this is, in the mid to late 2000s. In some ways, I think that you're an early adopter on those online degrees.
I think it might have been the first year that BU offered the program. And, look, I was in a really, difficult spot in my life at the moment. I wasn't in a position to stop working and kind of go get, my master's in a traditional sense. I just recently gotten married. There were, a lot of things happening in my career at the time that would have prevented me from, or would have taken me off track. And Boston University at the time was one of the first truly reputable traditional institutions that had offered a program in this kind of fashion, and I jumped on it right away. And it was hard. I never taken online courses before. Again, this is going back, I want to say 2007, probably 2007, 2008. And it was, a lot of weekends, a lot of nights, mostly through, what were message boards at the time, chat rooms, with fellow students, discussing projects and assignments the same way you would in a traditional environment, only all through digital channels. Frankly, a lot of work on your own, right? When you don't have the classroom experience, you really have to be buttoned up and diligent to make sure that you're really taking the time to do the work and the reading, to make sure that you're getting the value out of the curriculum that you would otherwise get in a traditional environment. But I found the flexibility of it really amazing, and there was plenty of interaction with the professors and the students at the time, and I found it to be a rewarding experience, frankly.
Were there professors or individual classes or even projects that stand out to you now as you think back to your experience that were sort of really important for your career trajectory?
I think what I really got out of it was like the kind of the financial valuation, the investment cases, like really learning how to evaluate, a business and whether or not it's going to make sense in the long term versus kind of the short term outlook. A lot of investment thesis stuff that we did that I thought was incredibly helpful for me on where I was at that stage in my career. Overall, I would say, the best thing that came out of it for me was, I was able to get an advanced degree from, a fantastic institution in Boston University while still being able to, be in New York, work in New York, pursue my career interests and still be able to do both of those things at the same time.
So what happens after you finish that degree? Are there a couple decisions that you make that help you sort of hit the gas pedal on accelerating your career, or what comes next?
Yeah, I felt like I really had like a moment of achievement that I had gone out and I had done that. Again, I was in this moment in my career at Universal in which the industry was changing quite a bit, and I happened to be one of the only people in the organization who, was working on our digital assets at the time. Most people still were focused on, believe it or not, like CDs and the physical business. And we had found that we were sitting on, I don't know, 300, 400 artist websites like Eminem.com and Rihanna.com. And we started to say, well, what would happen, if we started to put some ads on these sites? Because at the time when the record labels would build a website, they were basically just marketing platforms to announce that a new CD was releasing. It would have CD information on it, where you could get them, all that kind of stuff. But we had hundreds of these, and we started to experiment with putting ads on the sites. We did the first couple of deals with ad serving companies like DoubleClick and video syndication companies like Brightcove to try and take some of our content and run ads on it. And we started to build kind of what was, a small business for Universal, but, a new revenue stream in terms of advertising. And advertising really wasn't in the DNA of the industry at that point in time. It was, I wouldn't say frowned upon, but pretty close to it. And we only made a couple $1,000,000, but we started to show, like a little bit of traction in that space. And I would say, the reason I think as I look back, one of the reasons I think I had the confidence to step out of my pure finance shoes at that moment in time is that I picked up a little of that entrepreneur spirit, coming out of my master's program. And I think I felt a little bit more confident in my skill sets to take a couple of leaps of faith to do some of these things, and knew that they would make business sense for the company. And, again, I'm, maybe 30 years old at the time. And it just was the right moment in my career to do some of those things. And it worked out really, really well. And this kind of started me on my track to get out of the finance and accounting realm and move more into a business and strategy role. And as a result of kind of taking some of those moves, I ended up, and with a handful of other people who were part of that same team at the table, negotiating with Universal, negotiating for Universal with YouTube to launch what eventually became a company known as Vivo.
Which I think many people know now as being a great way to interact with video online. And so that transition that you make from that pure, accounting and finance to more of the business strategy, When you look back at that transition, are there things that you would go back and kind of do over again? I don't like to sort of be negative and say, did you make any mistakes that were real learning experiences? But that's what I'm getting at. If you had a chance to go back and do it again to relive those learning moments, are there things that you come to mind?
Yeah, I think when you're younger in a career, I think at least for me, it was easier to let fear kind of stop you from making certain decisions. And again, Jeff, I grew up in a family where like, very risk averse, I would say, right? And it was always take the safe play, right? Which is kind of why I ended up in accounting to begin with, right? And to put yourself out there and say, I know I'm not on paper, not the guy who's supposed to be doing this, but I think I'm capable of it. These are the right things to do. And, maybe if I don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. And to be able to take the risk to put yourself out there, I think if you were to ask me what mistakes I made, I think I would say, I wish I would have put myself out there earlier and, been more proactive in saying, no, this is who I am. This is what's authentic to me, and have that kind of be the decision maker and the driver for the steps I would take along my journey. I'm very lucky in that my career, even though I pivoted kind of at what I would say was a early to midpoint of my career to get to be in an industry and work in a field that I truly enjoy, there's still a part of me that says, what if I would have, had the courage to make those decisions a little bit earlier in my journey, where would I have ended up?
So when folks meet you and find out that you're, the chief digital officer of this massive media company, that you're working on digital strategy, I think everybody knows how important, any company needs to have a great digital strategy. What would you say to people if they asked you what sort of are like the characteristics, the personality traits that you need to have as a leader for digital strategy in order to be successful? Does that question make sense?
Well, I would say personality traits as a leader. I'm not sure if they really relate to digital strategy or not. But I think a good leader, is thoughtful, more than anything else, to lead with thoughtfulness, really to, understand, everything's people, right? In my world, in the media industry, everything is about people, right? And people want to be seen, they want to be heard, they want to be listened to, and everybody can be learned from. So the ability to kind of sit down with people, understand where they're coming from, really hear their concerns, you know, really hear what their ideas and thoughts are, and to be able to listen to that and really consume that, I think is one of the marks of a strong leader. I think whether it's a digital strategy or otherwise, the people who are closest, to the work, really probably have the best ideas on how to solve the problems of the business. And that's a bottoms up strategy, not a top down strategy. And in some companies, those cultures don't exist. But I think bottoms up strategies, I think, are something that I'm a big believer in. And I think keep you closer in the digital world, end up also keeping you closer to the consumer, which is really what digital strategy is all about, right? Digital strategy is, not about, bits and bytes and tech and data. It's about really understanding the consumer and, what they're telling you, what authority you have with them, what authenticity you have with them, the permissions you have, the role you play in their world. That's what, digital strategy really is. And, so keeping from a leadership perspective, keeping your ear to the ground and really listening to your folks who are on the front line, the critical part of building, any successful consumer first, digital business.
I know we're coming up on our time that you've been able to slot for me, but there's a couple more things I want to ask you about. First,
Yeah, sure.
I can only imagine that as you've made the decision to step away from Condé Nast, that you've been kind of reflecting on your experience, your success there. I want to make sure you know I have been a loyal Pitchfork Media
Oh, love it.
follower. I go to that website every weekday, probably for the last 10. I don't know how long it's been around. It's been at least 10 years. What are some of the things that you look back on and you're proud of, whether it was that acquisition or some of the other projects you worked on, things that you will take away knowing like, hey, I really made a difference here?
Look, I think the thing that I'm most proud of is that the digital business is, far more valuable than it was when I took it over, and we didn't have to change who we were or make a lot of compromises to accomplish that. If you go back to 2012, 2013, and it seems silly now, but there was a real question on whether or not our brands like Vanity Fair and Vogue and the New Yorker and GQ and Wired, whether they had lost relevance to some of the digital media pure plays like BuzzFeed and Vox Media and Vice. Had they lost relevance with younger audiences? And my strategy from the very beginning was to me not very visionary, but clear in that our mission had to be to operate our digital business with the same level of excellence and quality that our print editorial teams had operated with for 100 years. And when I took it over, frankly, the digital team here was not at that level. And we fixed a lot of broken things, patched up a lot of cracks in the dam, and brought our digital operations up to be a best in class operation across everything from consumer engineering to data science to audience development to our editorial. And the business has been a rocket ship, and it's now it's more than 3 times as big as the business I've inherited. It's a major digital media organization, domestically here in the U.S. And I think it's positioned to continue to grow. You mentioned Pitchfork. Definitely one of my favorite moments over the last couple of years is, as we talked about, a big music guy, grew up at Universal, launched Vivo, and when I came to Condé, we had leading editorial properties in so many parts of the culture, right? Fashion, food, travel, tech, lifestyle, and you name it. And to me, music is one of the few things that kind of like threads the entire culture together.
Yeah.
And people are very passionate about music. And I always looked at our portfolio and said that not having a pure play music editorial brand was kind of a glaring hole for me.
Mm.
And Pitchfork was a brand that just had the same DNA that Condé had, just a commitment to excellence in journalism, in the music space. And I just felt they fit us, they fit our company, and they are such a great team of individuals, and the founders were fantastic, and we made it happen, and we brought music to Condé Nast, and that will always be, adding Pitchfork to the masthead will always be one of my favorite memories for sure.
So we talked about this at the beginning. I know, this is a really interesting and I can only imagine a decision that you grappled with for a long time, but ultimately have decided to take some time off, spend some time with your family. But what's next for you? I mean, what can you tell us about what you hope to accomplish in the next 5 to 10 years? What kind of work do you hope to be doing?
Well, I think what I would say is this. I'm a big believer. I've been very lucky in my career that I've been able to find moments where there's been a real mission available to me. And when to me career fulfillment is when you can find a mission that you're really passionate about, and build a team of contributors that you admire and that you appreciate to chase down that mission with. And I had that at Vivo, and I had that certainly in launching the entertainment business at Condé Nast, and pivoting the digital business here. And that's what I always look for. I look for a mission that I can believe in, and the opportunity to build a team to go down and chase that mission. And I'm certain it won't take me long to find a mission that I'm that I'm excited about. Where is it going to be? What industry it's going to be in, I don't know. I'm a very open-minded guy, Jeff. When I was in accounting, I never thought I would end up in music. When I was in music, I never thought I would end up in publishing. And here I am. So I don't know what the next step necessarily holds for me, but I'm sure excited. I'm excited to figure it out, and can't wait to talk to you guys about it when I find it.
I will take you up on that offer. I also want to make sure that I'm hoping that we'll have this published before your last day at Condé Nast. And so listeners, if you've got an opportunity for Fred, he sounds like he's ready for that next big challenge. So hit him up on his LinkedIn profile. But Fred, thanks so much for carving time out of your day. I can only imagine how busy you are wrapping things up in your current role. We really appreciate you sharing some your story with us. It's been great to chat with you.
Jeff, I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
My thanks once again to Fred Santarpia for joining me on Proud to Be You. I really appreciated his openness and honesty as we talked about recent changes he's made in his career, and I know that we're all eager to see where he lands next. Keep us posted, Fred. Thanks again for listening to the Proud to Be You podcast. If you like what we're doing, please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review Proud to Be You wherever you download your episodes. I'm Jeff Murphy, and no matter where your path takes you, be proud to be you. The Proud to Be You podcast is produced by Boston University Alumni Relations. Our theme is from Jump and APM Music. To learn more about Proud to Be You, visit bu.edu/alumni/podcast.